of that conversation.
Thank you. So if you go to the next slide. That's exactly what we did. So just comparing, as Samuel said, to Oregon is not enough. We want to see how each of this group individually is graduating. I did not include the groups that, again, in the previous slide were not provided by ODE, but we do know that 100% of them did graduate. So you can see that we have some groups are having success, such as former English learners. 100% of our students who were learning English before they started high school, 100% of them graduated. So that's a big piece to celebrate.
How can you know exactly that you really are applying this cultural and inclusive, like all these programs and things to them, if not all of them are displayed? You said Native Americans, Asian, and Blacks, like if they're not even displayed, how are you know that that's even helping them at all? Like they're not even a part, they're not a part of the statistics on there.
Right, so I mentioned that the data that we are able to show publicly is the data that ODE released to the community. But again, I don't know if you can see the capture in the bottom that has an asterisk that says 10 students is the minimum N size needed to show in ODE's public report. And so you can look on the right-hand side, the numbers of students in each category. And for former English learners, that was the smallest number that could be shown because it was 12 students. However, we do know that then we go look out, like not publicly in the district, we can look at each individual group and know each of the students.
Well, sorry to interrupt really quickly, real question. So is there a way where you can see if, Black students, Native American students also fall under like homeless students or students with disabilities?
Yes, and none of the students who are in those 4 groups are students that were students with disabilities or economically disadvantaged or homeless. So that's why 100% of them in those 4 racial groups graduated. So that's a big
I might have heard that question differently. Is that, can you tell which kids, if there's kids are double counted because they fit this group and this group? Was that the question?
Yeah, well, I was confused. If I look at this, how do we know the racial makeup of the homeless students and the talented and gifted students and the former English learners? Got it. That's what I meant.
So I think those are really important questions. So I think that, what Andres shared is obviously the unsuppressed data or the suppressed data is what we can share in terms of those specific categories. When we sit down with the data file, we literally can go through and filter homeless students, right? And then we can go and look and have a conversation around precisely that. So we can, and if there's ever any interest in it, we can certainly dig a little bit deeper. This tool won't do it, but it could show you the racial makeup of our homeless students or our talented and gifted students. And we do that deeper analysis at the building level.
Okay, thanks.
So I have a question. So if there was an interest in us seeing that information, is that the type of information that you can provide to us for our review or to further the discussion at a later time?
And that's a great question. I would say possibly. I think we have to watch the same threshold that ODE has. So for example, if we have a group of 24 homeless students and we break that down, we're going to have maybe 3 Black African-American students, X number of Hispanic students, and so on. That brings it below that level that's publicly shareable. And the concern is, there's a law called FERPA, which is Family Education Rights and Privacy. The concern is that you'd be able to identify individual students because we're a small community and those are small numbers. That said, I think that if we look at trend data over time, right, if we look 3 years or 5-year data, it might be able to get you that kind of information where you could look at students over time in that particular category broken down.
And I can add, Justin, as we look at who are the students who are not showing up in this here for graduation rate, there were 20 students who did not graduate, so 20, and of those 20, 2 of them are continuing being in school today, and 6 of them actually got their GED. So even though they earned their GED, they're not counted on this graduation rate because they did not get a standard diploma. So that's something. So now the number comes down to only 12 students who was not continuing enrollment and did not receive a 4-year diploma. And some of those students are actually students who were last with us, for example, in 2019, and they did not enroll. No other school district claimed them. Therefore, Ashland School District was the last school with where they were enrolled. They were the last were enrolled. So, so that's something to know.
So we're effectively talking about dropouts, correct, Andrea?
Yes.
And so when we look at that group of 12 kids, I want to say, was it 6 or 8 of them were identified as Hispanic, and we look at that breakdown. Mm-hmm. And one of the conversations that I was actually having with the high school team this week is when we look, because we consistently over time look at our students, just as one example, that identify as Hispanic, Latino, they are not achieving at the same rate as our overall population. And so what's that about? And then the more important question is, what can we do differently that we're not currently doing? Well, most of our kids, we know that graduation begins in kindergarten, but this particular group we know started 9th grade the same year. And then if they count as a dropout, it means because they left at some point and didn't enroll in another upward.
Don't you think it's important to find out the reason why they dropped out? Because I have a feeling
that's exactly what I'm getting to.
I think that the conversations with the families and the parents that have dropped out, and I think that's where you guys are missing, that's where the disconnect is. Are you having these conversations with the families that dropped out? Are you finding out why they dropped out? Are you talking to their teachers? Are you following up? What type of work are you doing to follow those kids that dropped out, that are only getting GPs, that are not included in the surveys, that are not included in the stats? What are you as a school district, as a superintendent doing?
I'd be glad to talk about that, because
that
was exactly the conversation we're having. So
we're having, and I would like an answer.
I'm trying to get there, Tammy. It's an important question and it's a full answer. So I'll try to make it simple.
Wait. As the chair, can I ask that you take down the screen share for this so that it's easier for us to see everybody? Thank you. Thank you. And now please answer the question. Thank you very much.
So I think, one of the questions that I started this is what can we do that we're not currently doing? So first, let me tell you a little bit about what we are doing, right? Those students are very much tracked. If you go and you talk to one of the high school counselors, they'll often have the same student throughout high school. They know who their kids are, what their stories are. They've often reached out to families.
But do you reach out to families? Do you personally? Do you send an email? Do you send a card? Do you send a text? Do you make a call? I understand what you're saying, what the high school counselors are doing, but you as a superintendent, what are you personally doing? What have you personally done for those 6 families? And I'm just using that as an example because you brought it up. Those 6 Hispanic families, what have you personally done?
I have not connected with many of those families directly.
But why not?
Well, largely those folks that have a direct relationship with them are going to have a better outcome in terms of outreach. We've seen that with our exit data when we've tried to do exit interviews with kids and families. They won't necessarily respond to somebody that they haven't had a regular, sustained, and direct relationship with.
But you didn't try though. So how would you know? You didn't. You said that you have not reached out to them. So, but you didn't try. So how would you know? So why didn't you try?
Well, I think part of how I do know is I've worked with special needs populations for many years.
Why didn't you try? Why didn't you try, Samuel? Why didn't you try?
Tammy, do you want to let me finish?
I would like for you not to tiptoe around the question. I would like you to give me an answer. Why didn't you, as a superintendent, reach out to each and every 6 families personally to see why they dropped out? If you know that you have a problem with diversity and inclusion in the Valley, you know that there are not people of color, you know there are not students of color, you know that people are leaving the Valley. Why did you, as a superintendent, not reach out?
And my answer to you is my experience in doing that is
because you didn't want to reach out. Because you're not answering the question. So since you're not going to answer the question, I'm just going to be left to assume that you did not want to reach out. So Andrea, since Samuel is dropping the ball as the superintendent, I would like to know, what have you done?
Tammy, thank you so much for the question. I have not called the families. We actually, we reached, as Samuel said, you know, some people, like I have, as a teacher, and sorry, as a teacher, I have also been a teacher. I have also students, and I have a senior currently in another school district. As a parent, I would go and feel comfortable talking to my students' children. I would feel comfortable talking to the counselor that we've known for many years. I would feel comfortable talking probably to the principal, because
you would feel comfortable talking to everyone else except for the families. You would feel comfortable talking to the nurse. You would feel comfortable talking to everybody else. Well, I'm going to tell you right now that is that's unacceptable.
Wait, Tammy,
it's unacceptable, Andrea. It's unacceptable, Andrea.
Tammy, let her finish at least what she's saying, okay? Tammy, I hear where you're coming from, but I want her to finish.
I am.
And then I have something to say.
I am talking as a parent. As a parent of color, of a child of color, I would feel comfortable reaching out to talk to, or for somebody to talk to me as a parent in another district with the people that I have interacted. It would be hard for me to talk to the superintendent of the other school district, because I don't know them and I don't know their intentions. And so as a person of color, it's sometimes scary and threatening to talk to somebody and be vulnerable as to why my child probably is not graduating. Maybe I'm leaving to move out of the country. I'm going back to Chile. And that way my child would not count towards the graduation rate, even though she's a senior. Maybe my child is struggling through mental health, and that my child needs a little bit of more time, and hoping to come back the next year. So I'm responding as a parent. I would feel comfortable engaging in those conversations with the people with whom I have had a relationship that I've known through the high school career. And as I said, the first sentence I responded, I have not communicated with the individual families.
Thank you. Angela, would you like to?
Yeah, I would like to say something. Yeah, I was raising my hand here. Samuel and Andrea, I think part of our frustration here is that you just said that you rely on the counselors who have these long relationships with the students. And I've had 2 kids go through the system. My youngest is a senior right now. And just in high school, he's had a different counselor every year. And so there is no connection. And honestly, over the years, and this is why we're also frustrated, is we've seen the charts and we've seen the slideshows and we've heard everyone say, oh, this is, look at our great outcomes, but our children are suffering. We've had kids being called the N-word at lunch, and then having teachers and the principal at the middle school laugh it off as a joke. We don't have a connection with any counselor because they're never there long enough. And these kids are falling through the cracks because I think there's so much focus on the data without any real focus on the humanity. I mean, we failed a lot of kids. And by failed, I mean, they've just slipped through the cracks. They've been ignored. They've just, like my children, it's just kind of like, you know what, this isn't going to change. Let's just get through the school year and get out of here.
And that's scary because you guys aren't reaching, you guys aren't even, and I'm really upset because you guys are sitting here and you're telling me that, you know, these kids are dropping out at a higher rate and there's literally not kids of color here and you guys don't even reach out to them. That's unacceptable. Like, what do you mean you would be afraid to talk to the superintendent? If that's a problem for you to talk to the superintendent, that's the school district's problem. You keep saying about how you encourage diversity, inclusion, and welcoming environments. How was that welcoming? Angela is literally a mother. Her son is a senior. Have you reached out to her? She's a parent. I'm an employee that you guys hired for the Ashland School District, who was formerly the Black Student Union facilitator, and I just resigned. A person of color, I am the diversity here in Ashland. Angela is the diversity here in Ashland. Juan Santiago is the diversity here in Ashland. Precious is the diversity here in Ashland. Andrea, you keep saying, as a woman, as a parent of color, yes, you are a parent of color. You have a child of color who goes to school in a predominantly white space. Those children do not feel safe. And it's frustrating for me. I don't have any kids, but I'm an employee that has to work side by side, that have had kids come up to me in tears, tell me that their white peers have been making monkey noises at them, have been trying to touch their hair, have all these disrespectful things towards them. And you're saying that you don't even make time to reach out to them? How are you the equity director? How do you feel comfortable to call yourself director, the equity director, if you won't even pick up the phone and talk to those families? Like, that's unacceptable.
No, and you're absolutely right. Tammy is absolutely right. Nobody's reached out to us. We had several issues with my son and his friends where they were constantly being sent to the principal's office for whatever. I actually had somebody, I still don't know who, call me up and tell me they thought my son, he's biracial, they thought he was Latino. And they called me up and said, hey, we're really sorry. We sent Leo to detention. We had, and I quote, the wrong Mexican. And that's how they referred to it. I've mentioned this to the principal. I've had many talks with the principal of the middle school, Steve Retzlaff, and he will tell me exactly what I want to hear and smile and say it's all being taken care of, and nothing happened. So what you two are hearing right now is just years of frustration. So while I do appreciate the slideshow, what we want to know is how you're actually going to make any concrete changes so that our children feel safe. So our children know, so we know that they can graduate, so that they can talk to their teachers and they can have a conversation with their counselors. None of that is happening.
Like, I don't want to see any more slideshows. Like, I just want to know, what this work, what are you doing?
Enrique wants to say something and he hasn't yet.
So Enrique, please.
Yeah, this might be anecdotal, but I have several friends working as teachers at Ashland High, and then they talk about these programs and all of these ideas that a school district has to measure, right? All these attempts to produce metrics on gradation rates and whatnot. And for them, it's pretty easy to know who is getting behind. It's basically students with economic disadvantages and students of color. So do you have any program to reach out to the teachers and have conversations with them so you can be more effective to actually approach to the people that is actually getting behind?
I'd love to respond to the three folks that have spoken, if now's a good time.
Yeah, go for it.
I think the first thing I want to say, both to Tammy and to Angela, one is thank you for voicing your experience, because I do feel that, and I want you to know that I feel that, and I think those questions are fair. What are we doing? How are we doing it? And what am I doing? So I hear that. And I would love to kind of walk through some of the things. I think, Enrique, with respect to your question, I'm one person, and that speaks a little bit, I think, Tammy, to your question. I'm one person, but if I can influence an army of people so that, number one, we've got an organization that's talking about equity, that is getting trained in equity, that is understanding the language of equity. It doesn't matter where they are in their learning, but the conversation of that organization is about equity. That's a significant measure of change. The other piece about that is what we know about kids is if we can create a network of supports. I will be the first to acknowledge it, and I really appreciate, Angela, the experiences you voiced, because I wouldn't want any person to experience what you experienced. And so I definitely want to know more about that, whether in this venue or another one. But that's exactly why we need to do this work that we're doing. And I can't be at every bus stop. I can't be in the cafeteria every day or in every gym class or in every, so I have got to build an organization that has reflective individuals, that has an awareness and a desire and the skill sets to make things work for every kid. And if I can't do that, then, clearly I'm in the wrong job. But that's the angle that I'm coming from. And I would love to share, if there's interest, some of the work that we are doing. And I also want to say what the caveat is I don't have all the answers. I don't think we have all the answers. And I would love input on what we are doing. I think one of the things, Tammy, that you spoke of, and is how are we reaching out to people? How are we having conversations? And I think that's important. We do have some mechanisms that are coming that will help with some of those communications, conversations by providing some venues for it. We don't have that this year, and that is a problem. I don't know, Andrea, if you had anything you wanted to add.
So then what exactly are, so then you were talking about the work. So what are those things that you're putting into place for next year? Like what is that? What does that look like?
You bet. So Andrea, do you want to talk a little bit about the EDI advisory committee with parents and the surveys?
Yes. So there is a new guidance that is requiring districts that by 2025, we create an equity advisory committee to the superintendent. Instead of waiting.
Can I ask you a question? Emily, would it be all right if I shared a screen right now? It might be helpful.
I think it's better if you don't, actually.
Okay.
I think that we just want to have a conversation with you and not get.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's better if you don't.
But instead of waiting until 2025, it is something we're going to be starting next school year. So we are developing, we received the policy, the new guide, but now we're going to start developing how we're going to build that structure. And so that will be 2 years ahead, the required part. So that's one piece. Another piece that I would like to mention is for staff, we have been, I don't know if you know, but this year we were able to have all of our classified and certified staff participate and in either the Foundations of Equity course. That was a full day training for all staff who had not been on it before, or the staff who had participating in a similar training, participating in differentiated, deeper learning around equity issues, whether it is around supporting our LGBTQ students, universal design for learning for all students around engagement. And also we talked about English learners. And so and equity in grading. Part of it also is like, how are we grading? And is bias going into that? So those are some of the professional development activities that we've done. In addition, yes, Gina.
Thank you. I had a quick question, and Tammy and Angela, great questions. Thank you for bringing that forward, because these are important issues that need to be addressed. And on that slideshow I saw, or the slide presentation, I saw the sentence staff training lessons learned. So I hear you, Andrea, talking about the training. That's all well and good, but I have a issue with training. It's like, okay, I train, check the box and keep it moving. And equity is a verb. Mm-hmm. And it has to be a living, breathing thing. And so many times, what I've heard these examples from Tammy and Angela, there's been no lessons learned. So can you tell me about that?
Yes. So one of the pieces that I want to make sure that, you know, training is important because then we can hold people accountable. If they have not been part of a learning opportunity that lets them know about bias, that lets them know about microaggressions, that build that foundation, we can engage in the follow-up conversations of possible behaviors. And so that's the value of training. But yes, you're totally correct that the once and done training is not sufficient. It's how we put the training into action on our everyday choices we make.
So who holds you guys accountable? Like you and Samuel, you said you have these trainings in place because you can hold people accountable because it's taught it to you. So like if you guys, for example, you have 6 Hispanic students that dropped out and no one has reached out to them, you two. So who holds you two accountable when you guys make mistakes?
So Tammy, just really quickly, I do not know that they were not reached out to. I haven't. I just do not know personally. But I wanted to finish up Gina's question.
Yeah. Andrea, finish up Gina's question, and then Ann Seltzer has had her hand up for a little while.
So some of the things that we have learned through the training is that
Andrea, can I add a little bit before you go there?
Yes.
So just to paint a bigger picture, we have a couple of different employee groups. We have teachers, we have classified staff, which are bus drivers and cafeteria folks, and we have administrators. And then we have folks that work 9 months, 10 months, or 12 months. So all of our 12 months folks have had at a minimum foundations of equity. A lot of the sites have done various trainings throughout the years and have gone beyond that. This past fall, we provided a day where we had foundations of equity and then other areas as well to explore. And what was unique this fall is we were able to provide a full day of training for all of our classified staff, which are education staff in the classrooms. That's not normally within their budget or their calendar to do that, but we received special dollars. And so we actually provided 2 days of training for the folks. But that is really just a beginning. Some of the lesson learned is that we were really training everybody. And I'm going to let Andrea talk about some of the lessons that we learned, because the conversation on equity has to begin at different points. We have folks that are incredibly knowledgeable and incredibly living what you're talking about, and folks for whom it's just a new discussion.
Okay. I think I'm going to let Ann Seltzer ask her question because I feel like this question's been answered. Okay. Ann, go ahead.
Thank you. My question also has to do with accountability. So now we've heard from Angela, her stories about what her kids and their friends experienced at middle school. We're hearing from Tammy, who is currently employed at the middle school, telling you that this behavior continues. My question is, what does the school do? How do you, Samuel, and possibly you, Andrea, who holds that principal at the middle school accountable? Who holds those teachers who may witness these things accountable? And who holds the kids that are causing these disturbances accountable? It kind of ties in with, if the training is no good if it's allowed to just slide by. So that's my question, is how do you hold your staff accountable, especially given that you're hearing now that this behavior continues and is prevalent at the middle school? Thank you.
Sure. I'm going to jump in, Andrea, with a little bit, and then maybe if you can talk about bias incident reporting. But obviously, my job is to hold my principals and ultimately every person in my organization accountable. So one of the ways that I do that is provide opportunities for this kind of opportunity to speak and hear from folks about their experiences. And honestly, I wish my goal is to do more of that. But that's ultimately my role. And of course, you have a school board and a public that holds me accountable. I think that even our administration is still in a learning process. And one of the things that the state has asked all schools in Oregon to do is to develop a bias incident reporting system. Along with that system, there needs to be training for administrators and teachers And I suspect it'll follow very much the pattern that it had when we developed a system for Title IX reporting. Andrea, do you want to walk through a little bit what that looks like and what we're thinking in terms of educating kids and staff about bias incident reporting?
Yes, thank you so much. So to start, I would like to share that we have the Every Student Belongs policy, which states that we want the Ashland School District to is a place where everyone is entitled to learn, work, and participate free from discrimination or harassment. And in order to do that, we need to be able to not only respond to bias incidents, but create opportunities to learn about those incidents that are happening. And so we have created a reporting mechanism where anyone can report a bias incident. And it can go in two ways. One, they can do the Safe Oregon school, or on our equity page, we have a link. We have like every single school, and in it we have they click on it, a link for them to report a bias incident. This reporting mechanism allows us two things. One, to find out that it is happening, and now through this new system, Samuel and I will be getting are going to be getting notified of these bias incidents. If they are as compared to previously, if they were reported to the principal, we may or may not be knowledgeable about it. When we talk about the how do we go about responding, we want to ODE's guidance is to make sure that we do it in such a way that we center learning opportunities for everyone first. And so we want to make sure that that everybody's safety, both physical and emotional, are that their safety and physical and emotional takes first priority. Then we have to identify, gather information, and in such a way that is trauma-informed, healing-centered, and that when we're gathering that information, we are making sure that we're listening, and then we have to talk to the different parties involved individually. ODE's guidance is to try to use a restorative justice approach first and foremost, because we know that we're all on this continuum of learning. And so rather than going to a punitive approach immediately. And so we want to make sure that not only we hear what's happening, but then we create safety and support plans in place. And as part of that, we want to make sure that we're communicating with the families of the students involved and creating, like I mentioned, not only response actions, but also learning from them to create preventative actions so that those incidents don't happen in the future. We do know that at first we need to, so then the hope is that by having these reporting incidents, these documents, that then we can we have it in place that we are schools and as a district, we're going to be reviewing the data to determine what is happening, where are incidents happening, what are some things, steps that we can do, address where are some areas where action can be made to prevent from these incidents happening again. And learning and we're all learning, and learning is critical. But we want to make sure that we're doing it in such a way that students feel safe. And I know that Tammy and Angela, I'm so sorry that you've had those kind of experiences where you've hurt students. And it's true, we do have, we're nowhere we're in a situation where there are no incidents happening. And so we do want to continue investigating them, addressing them, and creating conditions so that they do not happen again.
Julie, do you have... No, wait. Everybody's got their hand up here. So just 1 second, okay? Oh. Samuel, I'm not going to let you answer because we're starting to use a lot of time here. So I'm going to call on the following people. It went like this. It went Julie Gillis, then it went Precious, then it went to Enrique, and then it's going me. Okay, Julie.
Great. Thank you. While I can, of course, appreciate the scale and kind of levels of bureaucracy that school districts are built within and without, it really feels like something's missing the mark here in kind of a core way. And my body is very activated by the pain I'm seeing coming from Tammy and from Angela and from Juan, and I'm sure perhaps Enrique and Precious too. And Andrea, you've probably experienced things as well right here. And I know this is a city committee, and so we're probably normally supposed to talk about data and processes and policies and so forth. But if policies and trainings worked, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. There's got to be something more and deeper. I don't exactly know what that is, but I know it's not fitting this particular scenario because the activation that I'm sensing is so deep and so painful that makes me want to kind of get up and find all of you and pull you into a room and like, let's really just talk and like not worry about data right now, because the story data that's happening in this zone is heartbreaking. And that there are children, and everybody knows better. Everybody knows that you're not supposed to do that to each other. We all know this. Teachers know it. Every teacher knows you're not supposed to do that. So it is still happening. I have had kids go through the schools, white children, male cis-bodied children who have witnessed things and came home immediately after getting here in the first year, 8 years ago. So something's really, it's the structural level is only on the surface bureaucratically, and that is not fixing the structural level of what inherent patriarchy and white supremacy and all of this is. So let's just acknowledge that, and then maybe we can find a different way of talking to each other.
Thank you, Julie. And then, like I said, it's Precious, Enrique, and then me. Angela, I saw you had your hand up, but I'm going to get through. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. I was going to kind of just echo what Julie was saying. I very affected by the narratives of Tammy and Angela, and my son, he is younger, so 6 years old, and in a way I feel a bit fortunate that he's kind of at that younger age where maybe some of the EDI implementation within the elementary school has been implemented as he has entered on. But one of the things that I think that could really help in terms of taking it a step further is, I know like the elementary school, there's a lot of different assemblies that talk about different cultural experiences and narratives, and I think that's a good introduction. What maybe could go even further is the actual children of different ethnicities and cultures having a voice within their class to talk about their culture. My son's class is very, very, very diverse, and they actually sang a wonderful song at their performance in Spanish and Japanese, which I was really happy to see in English. But I was like, oh, does your teacher even know that you're Mexican and Japanese? And he's like, no. So I think that it's a nice introduction, all the different type of cultural engagements, that events that they're having. I think the next step would actually be giving the students of different ethnicities a voice or space or confidence to talk about themselves in first person. At elementary school, my son is still always like identified as a villain on the playground. I don't know why. And like the kids, like he'll sometimes try and play with them, but he's like, why do I always have to be the bad guy? So I think that there's a good introduction happening. The next step would be like, okay, let's actually normalize some of these conversations from the diverse class itself, from the diverse students, and make space for that. And I, especially at such a young age, I think that that could be a pathway that could be more empowering, so we're not like hearing about these different incidents as they go on towards middle school and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Precious. Enrique.
I want to point out also, I think, to echo what some of my friends are saying here, is that we see a gap between the policies and the implementation of these policies. And just to give you an example, Andrea, you mentioned that you don't know if these Hispanic people will reach out to these families. And I know for a fact that in the case of Mexican immigrants, they feel very intimidated when they have to speak in English. So probably you're missing a good chance to reach out and talk to them in Spanish, in their own language. So that's what we wanted to point here, like pointing out that probably we're missing chances here. We have many examples in this town of people that figure out how to make their voices heard. We have a Latino Student Union at SOU that they're pretty effective at doing stuff, or the Native American Association. So there are many people that you can reach out as well to see examples of this. Thank you.
Before I speak, Angela, do you want to say something?
One thing I was kind of bouncing off just what Enrique said is, yeah, that representation that really matters. And you had something in one of the earlier slides about a goal for 2025 being cultural diversity of staff and teachers matching the cultural diversity of the student body. And we are so far from that in this school district. And I'm really curious as to what you're doing to get more teachers of color, because that would go a long way if students had teachers and staff members who look like them or who could talk to them. And at this point, my kids never had a Black teacher the whole time they went through, the school system here.
And can you answer that without referencing the chart?
Yes.
Good. Go ahead.
So it's a tough nut to crack, and I think it's something that we look at valley-wide, right? In terms of what we can impact. So we've worked together with other school districts. We've been working with the Education Service District to talk about strategies and to figure out how we can do this. And one of the pieces that keeps coming back is we've got to have communities where people of color feel welcome and want to come work. So we can do outreach, we can go into the job fairs, we can do a variety of different things, but unless they feel Southern Oregon is someplace they want to live and buy a house and bring their kids, it's going to continue to be a problem. Andrea can probably speak to some of the additional specifics.
It is such a chicken or the egg kind of situation, because if these little kids are being bullied and harassed, and why would anybody bring their kids here? Like, it's deeper than that. It's so much deeper than that. And that's not something that just policies are going to be able to fix. I'm activated, and I know that the two of you must be too. You are here, and I'm glad you stuck with it and you're listening to everybody talk. I mean, at the Shakespeare Festival, we're dealing with that, right? We've got threats. This is a bigger problem than
Before we can even get to any of the things that we're talking about, we need to get to the personal contact. We need to get to the point that you're actually having a conversation with these 6 families. And I keep referencing that because you brought that up. And it's like, until you sit down and talk to the mother or father or parent or guardian or whatever that they identify as, until you sit down with them and you have a conversation and say, what made your Hispanic child drop out of school? Was it the teachers weren't supportive? Was it I'm being harassed because of the color of my skin? Was it I feel threatened? I feel intimidated? It's like you said, yeah, we had the 6 families, but we didn't talk to them. We just got the notes from the counselors. So before we can even talk about retention rates for teachers of color, we need to talk about the parents. Angela, and I'm just going to use Angela because she has a senior that goes to the Ashland School District. We need to take care of the parents and the children that are already in this community. You have a parent of color that is here. on this call. So what if I would do if I were you and Andrea, I would take her information down. And after this call, when you have an opportunity, you should say, hey, Angela, I heard what you said, because you keep saying that you're listening. So I'm listening. I listened to what you said, and I want to try to make this better for the remainder of your child's senior year. Don't come with pinpoints, don't come with Venn diagrams, don't come with, well, what we're going to do in 2026. We are in 2023, February. Happy Black History Month. Have you guys thought of anything? What are you guys doing for Ashland School District for Black History Month, Samuel and Andrea?
Okay, I'm taking over. All right. I want to say a couple of things, and
Please
that is, I appreciate very deeply the emotion that is in this Zoom room right now, because I think it speaks to the depth of the problem. And I think that unfortunately in the world, because of the way in which the funding and the way in which the school system works, that the easier place to go to is charts, diagrams, and numbers. And because of that, the real live issues that everybody in this room is referencing, it feels discounted when you started with that sort of presentation instead of going to a real place. So I really appreciate that you hung in there through this conversation. But my concern is, at this point, I'm just going to stop with that concern for just a moment and go somewhere else. It offends me deeply when somebody compares a GED to a high school diploma. Okay. And that would somehow make up the number for what the problem is because the student got a GED. It's just not fair, and it's just not right in terms of how employers look at GEDs and how colleges look at GEDs. So that's one of the ways in which kids get tracked into a very bad area. So I'm just telling you my emotional reaction to something that was said, just so you know. I don't want a response. I just want you to know. And I think my question at this point is, you've heard what's going on in this room, and is where do we go from here? And if the answer is, we're administrators, we look at numbers, we care about kids, but we look at numbers and we're doing that sort of stuff, then I think that many of the people in this room will think that this opportunity that we have to communicate with each other has gone astray. And I'm not going to apologize for anybody on my committee, not at all. But I'm going to say that I hope that there's a way that we can address this issue in real terms, as Tammy is talking about, okay, in real life and in real time. And unfortunately, because it's 6:20 and our meeting's supposed to end at 6:30, but we have devoted this whole meeting to this, okay, unfortunately, I really don't have at the moment a great idea for how to interact with you to make sure that we are moving this forward instead of just having people going away frustrated. So I would welcome, because there were other things we were going to cover tonight, committee, okay? But I would welcome suggestions from anybody on this Zoom room before, to use a playground expression, somebody just takes their marbles and goes home. And I'm worried about that. And that's what I'm expressing, is I don't want this to be for naught. So if somebody has, particularly I'm looking at you, Ashland School District people, for an idea or for a suggestion at this point. Samuel, I'm glad that you stuck up your hand. Thank you.
Well, first, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here, and thank you for the honest sharing and the stories. These are the things that, you know, that we take from here. And I feel the impact of these stories, each and every one. Certainly, we're ready to come, you know, we're more than interested in coming back if the committee wants to have that. You know, the other piece that we're trying to put together are some family dialogue pieces. Andrea mentioned the committee and folks that can do that. We have EDI committees at each of our sites. There's also the district committee that she mentioned that will be starting next year. And that's an important way to have just this kind of dialogue. We need to know whether our systems and our charts and those other things, and we need those things, we like those things, but ultimately the proof is in human experience, and that's where the conversation needs to be. So I truly value this opportunity for that reason specifically. And that would be one avenue. The other avenue might be to invite us back and just continue the conversation.
Okay. Anybody else have an idea? Because I have an idea. Okay. Oh, wait. First, I've got Juan for an idea. Then I've got Anne for an idea. The other thing is, folks, on the committee, I think I'm allowed to suggest that we go for an extra half hour because there are things that we really do need to cover. So I'm going to try and get us done with this portion by 6:30. And then ask everybody for bear with me because I have never had a meeting go late in more than a year of being a chair. So, but there are things we do need to cover. So if we could keep going on this, and then if people can hang in there to the best of their ability, I'd really appreciate it. Okay, so it was first Juan and then Anne. Go ahead, Juan. Idea for what we do next.
You're muted, Juan.
You're muted. You're muted.
You have to unmute, Juan. Well, you can't hear you.
Sorry,
there
hi.
You go.
Yeah, I felt like there were already some rather clear solutions that was just like mentioned earlier, especially when Angela was like talking about like a school-wide or a school district-wide shout out for the, you know, like calling on the diversity of like staff and teachers, which there might be like a, you know, like maybe we're lacking when it comes to like prioritizing talking to the parents and talking to students and getting the support that they need. But in particular, the parents, because that's like the students' like primary support is when, you know, like our teachers of color and our staff who can quickly, you know, like get to those parents to talk in you know, the right language with empathy and truthfulness and transparency, I think is, you know, that's like some of the takeaways here that I felt like was already kind of like being discussed. I think has like some substance, you know, but again, I just want to echo, you know, like everybody's like how much I appreciate like the passion that's that we're experiencing right now with this topic. So that's what I got.
Thank you, Juan. Anne.
So I think a very simple next step would be for Samuel and Andrea to reach out to Angela and to Tammy, and I can connect the four of you via email. And it would be a wonderful gesture of the school district to actually want to listen and speak with Angela one-on-one and listen to her. And then to hear from your staff person who witnesses things. Maybe that's out of the norm. Maybe that's not what superintendents or directors of equity do, but it would be a lovely thing and easy just to connect with these two people.
I was actually going to suggest something else, and I need to make sure that Angela and Tammy are okay with this. It's what I would call a listening session by Samuel and Andrea about what the reality is from a parent's point of view and from Tammy's point of view, because she sees it and lives it in terms of what's going on in the middle school. And if Angela or Tammy feel like they need somebody else with them, okay, I think that there is Julie Gillis, I see her raising her hand, and I see Gina raising her hand. And if you two are willing to do it, and I understand there's a cost to doing that, and if Samuel and Andrea are willing to do it, and I understand there's a cost to doing that, but if you're willing to do it, all of you, then at least there's a way to continue the conversation, which I consider then to be more of a real life conversation. I have my own personal story is I've represented lots and lots and lots and lots of kids in school disciplinary hearings. And I'm very aware of policy impacting reality and what it means for the parents and the families. So I really hope that there can be a conversation before any child is further hurt by a disciplinary action when they are the victim, actually, of racial intimidation, which is usually what happens. So I guess I'm going to put you on the spot, Samuel, and I'm going to ask you, are you willing to have that conversation?
I walked into this room and I did so gratefully, of course. What I would suggest is that it would be wise to invite some of the middle school administration to hear people's input and stories as well.
Okay.
But I'm open to doing it either way.
Thank you. Okay, I don't know if, and Andrea, are you willing to do that?
Absolutely. We always want to hear from our parents, our students, our affinity groups is another place where we can hear from, and we have affinity of color for educators of color for our staff. Tammy, you're welcome to join us in the affinity groups for staff, where we can share.
No, I'm not going to, because I was already the BSU facilitator, but I currently resigned, and you know that, and you know why I resigned. I'm not going to even put you on the spot on this conversation because it's not that deep. But one thing I will say, I will not be reaching out to go to any more dinners, any more listening sessions, because I had a listening session literally a year ago with Samuel. He came to Ashland Middle School. He stayed for an entire hour. I talked to you for an entire hour, and I told you everything. I told you all the same things. I told you about how I wrote the same child up for saying the N-word. I told you about how some of these teachers treat the kids at the LGBTQIA. I told you about these things. And a year later, you have no answers for me. So I personally, I don't have the bandwidth in me to go and sit down with you for you to BS around, because my time is very precious, and you and Andrea like to waste time, and you will not be wasting my time. So maybe Angela, you might feel different. Do you want to go? Because I'm not going.
No, I was actually going to say, I spent a year with Steve Retzlaff, and he would look me in the face and tell me anything I wanted to hear, and then do nothing. I wrote letters. This isn't like, none of this was happening silently. There were groups of parents. D.L. Richardson and Becca Leroy helped start the Black African American Family Group. We all talked to school district people. We talked to principals. We talked to teachers. And I appreciate the idea, Emily. I appreciate your willingness, Samuel and Andrea. But honestly, at this point, I'm done. It's so frustrating. I suggest you talk to parents who have younger kids who are still willing to stay here and go through all this. But I had so many countless countless conversations with Steve Retzlaff. One time, I actually wrote a letter to Steve. I copied every school board member. I copied the BSU. I copied strangers, just like Black people, watch out. And at this point, a listening session and any comment like we're still learning is not going to go over well with me. And I don't mean to sound ungrateful for what you're offering, but I'm with Tammy. I've got no energy, no appetite for it. And it's unfortunate. I do strongly suggest you do talk to families who have younger kids, go to the middle school, watch what happens, talk to the kids and the families at the middle school.
Because you're not talking to them. You're not. The parents are coming to me. Their parents are coming to me, telling me that they have been sending emails. They have been calling, getting your secretary. The people have been coming to, no. We don't.
Nobody's listening to us.
Say, you are the superintendent, Andrea, you are the director of equity or whatever your position is. So you heard us now. So now it is your turn. Like, thank you so much, Emily, for offering that. But me and Angela are out.
Yeah.
It's a hard no.
Great. I really appreciate Tammy and Angela. I'm going to tell you something right now. I really appreciate your honesty. Okay. And I really appreciate your educating me on what the history is of this has been, because I didn't know it. Okay. So I really appreciate your honesty. And honestly, at this moment, I take back my suggestion. Okay. And I hope that I didn't in any way insult or demean either Tammy or Angela by suggesting it, and that you understood that the place that it came from.
No, I appreciate you trying to put that out for us, because you seem to be the only person, because Samuel and Andrea have already told us, and this has been recorded, and said that they don't make an effort to talk to the families that have dealt, the families of color. So it's nice that you were actually trying to build a bridge for that, because Samuel and Andrea have dropped the ball, and you guys are incompetent at this point.
Right. Okay. So I hear everything that everybody is saying. I feel, okay, there's two things I'm saying here. Number one is I hear what's going on in this room. Okay. And I feel like we are really at the end of the rope of the discussion. And my concern is, and again, I'm speaking as the chair here, my concern is that what I don't want to do at this point is to do anything else in the future that will in some way undercut Tammy and Angela's legitimate concerns. And I'm concerned of the notion that we can somehow make it better by having another meeting, when in fact that will then get used to actually further the problem, if you understand what I mean. So I think that there has been enough information shared at this point. And what I'm going to do is to thank Samuel. And I know, Julie Gillis, I see your expressions. I see everybody else's expressions. But there comes a time where, and that's why I asked both Tammy and Angela, where you don't want and you shouldn't make people suffer more than they have already suffered. And I don't think there's a way to have a further conversation without increasing the harm that has been done to Angela and Tammy. So I retract my offer. I probably should have asked Tammy and Angela offline, but there I was in the moment. So I didn't, and I apologize for that. And I really hope that we can, in some future world, have an Ashland school district where Angela and Tammy do not report these problems. But for right now, what I want to do is ask Samuel and Andrea to get off the Zoom so that we can move on to some other things. Thank you both very much for coming. And I'm sorry that we're at this point, but we are.
Well, I appreciate what was shared here tonight, and I appreciate the opportunity. So thank you all.
I concur. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Samir. Thank you, Andrea.
Good night. I just want to check in. Hold on a minute. Time out. I just want to check in. Angela, are you okay?
I'm fine. I can't stay much longer. I'm still at work, and I've got to edit some stuff to get on air tomorrow morning. So I'm fine. Thank you, Tammy. Yeah, that was.
I'm sorry. I didn't expect to get so passionate about it, but no. It makes me really upset when people look me in the face and lie to me. And Samuel and Andrea were literally lying. It's like, how dare you come on here and admit that you had 6 Hispanic families, not 2 white families, you had 6 Hispanic families, and you speak Spanish yourself, and you knew that they dropped out and neither one of you reached out to them. I was over it after then. I was like, I feel so disrespected for those families. Yeah. Like, you have no idea why they dropped out. And it probably has something to do with racism, but they will never know because neither one of them picked up the phone to call them.
Okay.
This has been ongoing. So thank you. Everything you said, I completely appreciate, Tammy. They did just what was expected.
Wait a minute.
Angela, I just have to, sorry to interrupt. I just have to tell you, I really appreciated when you said data versus humanity. And that kind of summed it up. So that was really great.
1 second, Gina. Just 1 sec. Okay. Tammy, are you okay?
No, I'm not. I feel like I'm very angry. I'm very angry, Emily.
Okay.
I'm livid. Like, I'm shaking.
Okay.
I'm so mad.
All right.
Like, so I don't even want to go to work tomorrow.
Right. Okay. Tammy, I totally understand your reaction. And I want you to know that. And that I don't think, that's why I said I certainly wasn't going to apologize for anybody in the room. And I don't think that there is anything wrong or anything with showing emotion over something like this. And that it's a good thing for you to have felt that you could express yourself. And I'm thanking you for it. So just like I'm thanking you for doing that and for hanging in there through the meeting and for keeping going. So I really appreciate it. And I want you to know that. And that's why I'm saying this to you right now before the moment passes. Okay? Thank you for letting me say it.
Thank you, Emily. I appreciate that. That means a lot. It really does. I'm sorry. I'm really upset, you guys, but I appreciate you guys. Like, thank you, Enrique, for like following up questions, and Gina and Precious and Anne. Thank you guys for like showing a divided, like, we were not divided. Thank you for showing a positive front, because we didn't let our foot off their necks. Like, they showed us that PowerPoint, and then they said, well, the Black, Pacific Islander, Asians, Native Americans are not displayed. I'm like, so how are you basing any of the stats if they're not even displayed on here? They're like, well, we've talked to the families. I'm like, but you just said that you don't talk to the families.
Right.
So so are we saying all these numbers are skewed? Because you just got on here and said that you had 6 Hispanic families that you didn't even talk to. So if you're saying that you're putting other races under other cultures or other ethnicities, how do we know that this information is correct?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Gina wants to say something, and then we're going to go with, Gina's shaking her head violently too. No, Gina, go.
I applaud you to Tammy and Angela for speaking up. And I'm glad that you knew that you're here with us. You're in a safe space. Say what's on your mind. I feel terrible, Tam, that you have to go work in that environment. And to me, I have one question. I believe that he said he was asked accountability. And Tam, I think you asked, who holds you accountable? Who holds you accountable? And I believe he said the school board. Is that correct? That's what I heard.
Yep. Okay. He said that. It took him a while to say that after.
Well, I heard different things, and Andrea said she doesn't know who holds them accountable.
So. I know that was.
Yeah, that was. But he said the school board, and so I made note of the school board, and to me, that just amplifies how important it is to have the right people on the school board. And I know some people on the school board, doesn't say that they're the right people on the school board, but that just speaks to how important it is. So I just thank you, and I wanted to make note of that, and I just wanted to follow up with the school board.
Yeah. So who cares more than anything else about having enough money to run the school? Just saying, Gina. Okay. Anybody else have anything else that they feel like if they don't say on this topic right now that they will burst? Going once, going twice.
Did you?
Yeah, I think this is just my first meeting, and I really appreciate what it was said. And Angela and
first meeting.
You're welcome.
You said that you're very upset and whatnot. So if you feel upset because you're saying what you had to do in front of us or me, don't worry about it. And I really appreciate what you said. And it took me 10 seconds to realize that it had to be said. So
it just like, you can't tell me that you're doing work. Like they kept saying that they're doing all this work, but then I started asking questions like, what work are you doing? It's like, well, I didn't do that. Well, we haven't done it yet. We haven't done this. So it's like, so after Angela's son's grad, that's why I'm sorry, I kept bringing it back to Angela, because you're actually a parent who has a kid in the school system right now. It's like, so what are we doing afterwards when he graduates to follow that? Like, are we following up with Angela? So if he said that he had an incident when he was in the 10th grade and some white kids called him the N-word, how are we following up? How are we seeing that he feels comfortable and safe? They kept saying safe, welcoming. It's not welcoming or safe for people of color.
Right.
So it was just very frustrating for me that Andrea keeps saying that I'm a person of color. And it's like, yes, you are a person of color. Why don't you act like it, Andrea? Like, you have a child who is a child of color. The children are suffering. And the stuff that you worked so hard to perfect, these PowerPoints, is not even reflecting the small percentage. They said less than 10 people. Did you? That's why I had to ask again. I'm like, did you say less than 10? It's not displayed because it's 10 or less. So that doesn't necessarily mean it's 10. It could be 4. So does that data reflect when those kids, so what if you had 42 Black kids that came into school? Are you telling me only less than 10 graduated? So what's the data to follow that? Like, they had no answers for us. So that's why I had a problem. That's why it was making me upset, because I felt like I'm asking them a question, but you're just telling me what I want to hear. And I don't want to hear what I want to hear, because the kids are literally suffering. And that's why I'm working for like $7 less than what I could be working for 2 degrees, because I know that there is not representation in this school district. And I see that do differently.
Hold on. All right. Tammy, I hear you. I think we all hear you, and we're here for you, and we support you. But Precious has her hand up, and I know that there are a couple of things that we've got to deal with at 7:15.
Precious, please add.
I'll just add one last thing, that the multiracial category is very concerning, because in regions such as Oregon, where there's not a lot of people of color, just like our family, we are multiracial. But so then are we not counted as Asian, or are we not counted as Latino? So I think that's something that I would love to follow up on that multiracial calendar category. That could be missing so much information. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Totally. Okay. And what else do we, this has been quite an emotional meeting. Okay. And I share the outrage at the Ashland School District from their response. I just need to move the meeting along because that's my job. Okay. And what I said at the end in terms of sharing the outrage is that the worst part of all of this, in my mind, is that it's the kids who have been the victims of the discrimination wind up the ones who get disciplined. And that, to me, is the real outrage. And what else do we absolutely need to cover at this point?
I think there are a few things. I think, Emily, if you want to speak to the anti-Semitism proclamation. Tammy, your statement for Black History Month, I need approval for that statement so I can post it on the web. We can wait on the May date for the social meeting. We can wait on Sunrise Town. we can wait on the Welcome Project because Precious hasn't spoken to Joe, and I'm sure we can wait on the recruiting update. And then if we have just a few minutes left, I think it would be a wonderful thing to hear from Gina, the MLK celebration, and her thoughts on town hall. But those two things, anti-Semitism and the statement for Black history, we do need to cover.
Okay, so the anti-Semitism proclamation is on the City Council agenda for February the 7th. At the top of the agenda, we hope that it's actually going to go pretty much at 6 o'clock. And anybody is welcome to listen to it, to hear it being read, and to know that our city councilors are going to read the proclamation for anti-Semitism. I could read it to everybody, but I know we're really busy at the moment. So I was thinking that perhaps, Anne, what you could do is just forward it to people so they know what we've put forward as a committee, because right now people don't.
I will.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I think that'll solve it. And then anybody is welcome to attend, okay, the city council meeting, or look at it or watch it or do something like that. I need to be on Zoom because I have to go to Portland. But I will be testifying, and there will be members of my congregation there. And then afterwards, and I'm looking right at you, Angela, when I say this, then afterwards, and after it's actually passed and passed unanimously, is when we're going to do the publicity about it. But the reason we're not doing it before, to make it very clear, and why we're not just asking everybody in the world to come, is because we don't want to encourage people who perhaps do not agree that the city of Ashland should have an anti-Semitism proclamation, to give them honestly the opportunity to create a disruption during the meeting. So of course it's on the agenda. We're not hiding anything. We're not trying to do anything like that. We just want to make sure that this passes and that the city of Ashland affirms the anti-Semitism proclamation. Okay, Gina, is there anything else you want to say?
Emily, get Tammy, please.
I'm sorry.
Black statement, Black history.
Great, thank you.
Yeah,
Tammy.
sure. I just want to say that.
Can I give you an introduction?
Oh,
can I just tell you? Okay, Tammy's statement is fantastic. Okay, for Black History Month. It's great. And if you haven't read it,
thank you.
Because it was emailed to all of us, not only should you read this, but you should post it in your own workplaces, libraries, houses, anything, Catalyst, Gambrel, so that people know about why Black History Month is important, because in the white world, it's just another thing unless somebody explains to you why it matters. So Tammy, thank you.
Of course. Okay, so I want to say first before I read it that Anne helped me with all the edits. So thank you, Anne. So I'm going to read this and you guys let me know what you think if you haven't got it already. So the statement is: the Social Equity and Racial Justice Committee invites you to celebrate Black History Month throughout the month of February. We honor and remember the Black Americans who contributed to the advancement of the United States as well as its culture. Despite the attempt to strip the culture of African ancestors, taken and brought here to work against their will, their African history and culture preserved and influenced a new country that treated Black Americans as less than. Consider learning more about the history of Black Americans and read the 1619 Project published by the New York Times Magazine. This excellent piece requires us to place the consequences of slavery and the contributions of Black Americans at the very center of the story, as well as we tell ourselves about who we are, as a country. We honor the Black Americans that are here today and continue to fight for the equality of future generations. We acknowledge that the city of Ashland has not always been responsive in creating a diverse and inclusive space for Black Americans in this community. And while Ashland has its racist past, we believe that it will not affect the melting pot we want for tomorrow. Black history is American history and should be treated as such. Our committee, appointed by the Ashland City Council, will continue to strive for equity, diversity, and racial justice for all people in Ashland. And that was a statement that I wrote for Black History Month.
Yay.
Oh, thanks. Guys, thanks. Okay, if you guys have any edits or if you wanted to add anything, or if I read it and then you see something that you want to edit, please edit it out so Anne could submit it on the website.
I'm going to post it tomorrow morning.
Perfect.
I move that we adopt the statement for Black History Month as written by Tammy and that it gets posted tomorrow morning. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Precious. Okay. Does anybody oppose? Okay, ready? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Anne, am I missing anything? I think I'm up to Gina. Am I?
You're up to Gina.
Great.
I've never been more proud to be the liaison of this advisory committee as I am right now. I have goosebumps. Much love, much love. Yes, and welcome Enrique. He's like, whoa. So
meetings are usually like this, Enrique. You were in for a treat today. You weren't.
So questions, did you want me to talk about the fence? Did you want at Railroad Park? Did you want me to talk about the town hall?
I think what I'd like you to talk about, Gina, because I know that there's a lot that's happened, is sort of what's happening in the big picture with the city, okay, and how people can still go and put the dots from the forum on the website and why it matters. Okay.
Okay, so let me tell you about the dots and why it matters. Anne, I don't know if you could put in the chat the link, but you can get it from the city's website. Why does it matter? Because the city council is going to look at this and count up all these dots and go, oh, everybody in Ashland really is supportive of this and not so supportive of this. We have a $4.3 million deficit, and we need to look at this and see how can we get back to black, okay? So in saying that, when you look at these different categories, it's 7 different categories. Under the categories are these little sub points, and you can look at it. There's parks and open spaces, there's public safety with policing and fire and ambulance, there's social equity. Social equity under that umbrella is affordable workforce housing, are unhoused. And there's just open living, living for all of us. And so there's different categories. It's so important that we go there and voice our opinion and tell your friends. And
thank you.
When it comes time to where we are broadly, as of today, the council started to receiving, as you know, our mayor resigned last Monday, last Tuesday, Councilor Moran, he resigned also. So, and on April 27th, we start this budget process. So we need to put ourselves in order before 60 days. As of today, we received one, last time I looked, application for city councilor. And then we will have until February 14th. If anybody's interested, come be my ally. Anyway, so we have till February 14th for all applications to be into the city. And then after the 14th, from the 15th to the 20th, the council will review the applications and we will whittle it down to about 3 people and then take it from there. And the one person, of course, will get the seat. Or we might have 2 people get a seat. because we don't have the mayor's position. If somebody on council decides, which will not be me, if somebody on council decides I'm going to step up and be the mayor, that means we'll have 2 seats to fill by February 20th. That's when applications are in and done on the 14th. From the 15th to the 20th, the council reviews applications. On the 21st, the person or persons are appointed. Our next city council meeting, February 7th, that's when we'll know who our mayor is. If nobody steps up for that position, then that too, an application will go out to the people of Ashland, and one of you can step up and be mayor. So it just,
Gina, are you asking one of us to nominate someone to be the mayor?
I would love for, the mayor is wonderful, but you can't vote. And I want to vote. I want to voice, I want to vote, I want to say no, and I want to say yes. So I would love for somebody who looks like us that I'm looking at to step up and come to council. If I can do it, you can do it. I never thought this little black girl would be sitting on the Ashland City Council. And we have to have more brown and black people and people of color. I'm the first black person to ever be on city council. I'm the first queer person in Southern Oregon. I mean, come on.
Gina?
I would love to do it, but I feel like I need some anger management classes before, because obviously.
Gina?
I can't.
Gina, wait a minute. Listen, I got to say something as the chair of this committee. Okay. If I lose people on this committee, Gina, I mean, really here, I'm going to do the dozens with you on this, because as you know, getting people appointed and getting them through the city bureaucracy, Enrique, is enough of a problem. And if I'm starting to lose people because one of us go on the city council, you're taking them from my backyard.
Well, girl, let's go. Let's go. We need some help. I'm telling you, we need some help. And I understand that. And this body right here has so much to do. You know, when I was at the town hall and I was at the table of social justice, there were so many people talking about workforce housing. That is social justice. So many people talking about students that have living in their cars. That is social justice. There's totally. So you know, you have a lot to do. We all do.
Yeah. Gina, how long is the years for the term? So if we're replacing Councilor Moran, it's a 2-year appointment. But if Mayor Graham, for example, becomes the mayor, then that's a 4-year appointment.
No, it's a 2-year.
2 years?
She would be there the term that Julie's term is up in 2024.
Yeah, but the city councilor though, replacing Tanya.
It would be that would be a 4-year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I mean.
2-year. Yeah. So it's at seat 3 and seat 2 would be available if Tanya steps into that role. Right now, she is the chair of the council.
Right.
She's been acting, you know, interim. So yeah.
Good. Okay. Anybody else have closing words after a wonderfully alive meeting today? I mean, let's look at it that way, right? We had real life here tonight instead of just pushing pens around from one side to the other. Precious, tell me about Afro Scouts before we leave, and First Friday, and how long the show is going to be up, and anything else that you want to say to us about it while we're all here, still hanging in there and listening to each other and loving each other. Go.
Yes, thank you so much for everyone sticking around tonight. Is very emotional, lots of different experiences, narratives. Tomorrow, we are really celebrating, highlighting our Southern Oregon base organization. These are kids from like 4 to 18 years old or 3 to 18 years old who have created art. And a lot of themselves did not see themselves as artists. This is also BASE's first art show. Even Tiffany from BASE said that at 35 years old, she has never really even been to art galleries. So having our Black students, our significant Black organization, having people come, celebrate them, see their artwork, buy their artwork, the kids are selling their artwork, is so important in terms of making space for Black artists, Black narratives, young people. And so that is happening tomorrow at Catalyst, 357 East Main Street in Ashland, and like 4:30 to 7. At 6 o'clock, they're going to do their artist talk. And so we are making space for them. We are highlighting them for Black History Month, but also setting a precedent that young people, Black organizations, we have to make space for them. And so it's important for us. So thank you, and hope to see you.
And how long is the show up for, Precious?
It's all February.
Okay, but not February and March.
Nope.
Okay, great. So if you can't go tomorrow night, me, right? Okay, because I'm not even in Ashland, but if you can't go tomorrow night, you've still got the rest of February to be able to get yourselves there and support a young kid. Gina, you want to say something else on the way out the door?
Yes, please. I wanted to let everyone know that I've spoken with the Chamber. We are looking at Dr. Martin Luther King Celebration 2024 at the Ashland Armory. I've spoken with DL, Marvin, Preston, Cynthia. I've spoken with these people, and I did early on talk to Vance, so I have to circle back around and speak to Vance, because I would love for us to do something collaboratively. And I just want you to know that it's out there in the works, and not unless the universe knows something I don't know, it's going to be there.
I'm sure it's going to be there, Gina. Thank you. Okay. Once again, I'm thanking everybody for all of your energy. I'm doing a particular shout out to Tammy for just doing like about 5 things tonight, including the reading of the land acknowledgement. And to Angela for willing to put herself back out again on the line in a painful situation, and for everybody not only just hanging in there, but I think we're coming together, and it's very hard on Zoom, but I think that we're coalescing and coming together in support of each other's communities in a very positive way. And I really appreciated the support immediately from this committee over the anti-Semitism proclamation last month, and how quickly we have been able to get that in front of City Council while somebody still remembers what happened with Menorah and Medford. So thank you to everybody. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.